Today I'll be analyzing the short visual novel Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk. I'm a first-year student at one of the more well-known Dutch universities, and I'm studying a bachelor's degree that would come closest to the English word psychology. With this study, I will become a practitioner at a mental health clinic once I graduate. With that said, I will be going over the contents of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk, but be aware this is not a professional diagnosis or anything. This is just made for entertainment purposes. This video does not include the sequel Milk Outside a Bag of Milk. If I play through that and have new insights, I will make a follow-up video. Since this video encapsulates the entirety of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk, know that there's gonna be spoilers. Right as you open the game, after you pick your language, you'll be asked to help someone buy milk. Your only option is to click OK and write down your name. I'll let the game play and provide commentary along the way. So right away you can sense something's wrong. She mentions that she hasn't been outside in ages. This could be due to herself not wanting to go out, also commonly referred to as agoraphobia if it's an extreme case, or she could be held inside by someone else. This is actually a smart coping strategy that it's not too bad. I can see this be used for people with anxiety to help them get through certain social interactions, much like the protagonist is doing right now by imagining a visual novel and practicing what she's going to say in the store. Another very common treatment for anxiety-related disorders is exposure therapy, which is kind of displayed here in a way since she's going to the store. Something she might find scary or difficult to do. This hyper-awareness of what someone is doing and the need to fix it before something bad might happen reminds me of OCD, or obsessive-compulsive disorder. As you can see, the voice we play as told the protagonist to take one step back to fix it. This is just one of many symptoms, but it doesn't necessarily mean she has OCD. This specific example reminds me of counting and symmetry compulsion. The action to retake a step can be characterized as a compulsion to reduce anxiety related to this situation. The fact that this happened before reinforces my belief she might have OCD. It sounds like she's tried to fight these thoughts before and ultimately settled on this compulsive behavior to deal with them. The voice we play as is clearly guilt-tripping our character to keep going on this journey. It's nothing I can comment further on right now, but if we see more behavior like this, there might be a form of gaslighting going on. At first I was confused by this appearance, but after the voice said we'd be stuck in an endless loop, I had two possible explanations for this. Either our protagonist is hallucinating different responses of an actual employee. Instead of hearing the actual words, she only hears the letter O. The other explanation here would be that she is fully hallucinating this employee. There might not even be an employee there. Let's keep watching to see if we can narrow the options down to one. The fact that the employee knows she's terrified of the letter O makes me more confident in my second theory that she fully hallucinated him. A normal employee wouldn't know this, of course. Also, I appreciate the game playing with the font size in this section to spice things up a bit. What I can gather from the image that the protagonist showed us is that she is terrified of the nothingness the gaping hole in the letter O is. A black void that can swallow you whole, where you can get lost in. That's what I imagine she might think when she pictures the image. After she repeated the letter O back to the creature, it disappeared. Not only does this reinforce the idea that this creature is a hallucination, but it also showed that some amount of continued exposure to the letter O gave the girl the strength to repeat it after the creature. Here we can see that the voice helps her remember what you are supposed to do in a store. I will comment on this section a bit later once we are further into the story. As for the wordplay on milk inside a bag of milk, this is an obvious title drop. Other than that, I tried to break my head over what it could mean, but I'm not sure. Of course there is milk inside a bag, so I can understand the sentence milk inside a bag of milk, because that's essentially what she's buying. The sentence milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk might be referring to her carrying milk inside a bag of milk, the actual product, in another probably plastic bag, which is thus holding the bag of milk she bought. This would be milk inside a bag of milk inside a bag of milk. Here, the voice is made aware that it is visible to the reader of the visual novel, which will make a lot more sense in a few minutes. It is also implied here that if the girl returns home too late, she will be punished in some sort of way. The way it's phrased makes me think it's a form of either physical or verbal abuse. This confirms that it's indeed physical abuse. Other than that, this seems like a common conversation between an employee and an anxious customer. So obviously this did not actually take 2 days. This is clearly a time perception issue. This, along with the previous hallucination, lets me think this girl suffers from schizophrenia or psychosis. If I get more evidence for this later in the story, I will comment on it again. She mentioned that she's been in physical therapy. This could obviously be for a lot of different reasons, but another symptom of psychotic disorders is abnormal motor behavior. It could be that she received physical therapy to help her with some of these motor skill problems. The ice cream analogy was easier for me to figure out than the bag of milk analogy. What the protagonist means by this is the following. She referred to the way to the store as the stick of the ice cream. She means she walked to the store without having the milk. The way back home is referred to as the ice cream. This is because she is walking home with the milk. All this together makes one ice cream, which is what she refers to as simple math. This might be another reference to the motor skill problems, as she is having difficulty walking on the asphalt. The fact that she's focusing so hard on walking, almost obsessing over it, might be another hint to the OCD we talked about earlier. This is another hallucination. This time she hallucinated a truck to be a bear. This further confirms my suspicions she suffers from a psychotic disorder. Now this is an interesting sentence. I'm not in the world you're talking about. She might be referring to how different her perception of the world is due to her hallucinations and beliefs caused by her disorder. This is yet another perfect example of hallucinations. She hallucinates the traffic lights turning green, while in reality she's probably running through red lights. The same goes for the rain cloud. That one probably is not there at all, and merely a hallucination. Even the voice has the option to comment that maybe it's just all in her head. The coping strategy of thinking you are in a visual novel is now more so turning into a delusion, as she thinks there are actual readers who can read her thoughts. Technically speaking, this is true since we as the player can read her thoughts, but in her own reality, this is not the case. This is where we learn that this girl is in fact on medications. These are most likely medications for her psychotic disorder. This is something very common in practice. A lot of people think that their diagnoses define who they are, and to some people, they do. A lot of people judge others based on their medical diagnoses, whether physical or mental diagnoses. I've always said that diagnoses can help understand your issues and behaviors to help figure out the best way to treat them. However, they don't define who you are. You still are the same person as before your diagnoses. This does not mean that you should feel pressure to share them, though. Only seeing red is another form of hallucination, further confirming that she has a psychotic disorder. However, it makes me think this disorder might stem from trauma that she briefly mentioned. On top of that, she mentioned that the monsters in the store aren't scary, but maybe scared of her. I think this confirms even more that they were in fact hallucinations. This is where it's fully confirmed that the protagonist is talking to herself all along and that the voice from earlier is just herself. It makes me believe that we as the voice are the remaining rational thoughts left in her mind that helped her buy milk at the store, possibly reinforced by the medicine she takes. This might give her enough clarity to perform tasks like buying the milk. This gives us more detail on the trauma she went through, and also a possible explanation as to why she only sees red. After seeing the blood of her deceased father, it might have triggered that hallucination after the long memory gap. Psychosis can be a cause for traumatic memories, but the opposite is also true. Traumatic events can trigger psychosis. What I think happened here is, in their obviously dysfunctional household, the father committed suicide. This traumatized our protagonist a lot. Memory loss is very common in post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. In this memory gap, she could have developed psychosis, as well as after she started remembering this again. This is probably also the time period she was prescribed medicine. Her remaining family, which as far as we know is her mother, is probably still abusive towards her. This is where you can see that the visual novel in fact did start out as a coping strategy for her. As I previously mentioned, I think this did spiral into a delusion since she now thinks that the reader is real. Here we can see that she stops herself from talking too much about what she's been through since she thinks it's rude. It's a common thing found in people with mental health issues since they often don't want to be a burden to the people they are talking to or are afraid they are dumping too much info on someone at once. In this case, it's a shame because it prevents us from finding out more about her. It's a very understandable response though. This is another great example of exposure therapy, although not a safe one. Do not do this at home. It shows that if you repeat something you are afraid of many times, your fear for that thing will dwindle. Exposure therapy is often used in cognitive behavioral therapy. This makes me wonder whether some of the side effects of the medication she's taking are actually working against her. It seems that the medicine she's taking right now causes her auditory hallucinations. Perhaps she's taking antidepressant medication, which is causing the hallucinations. Some antidepressant medications can cause psychosis-like symptoms. I'm not a psychiatrist though, so don't take my word for it. This interaction between mother and daughter is very cold. The mother does not greet her daughter and instead only asks about the milk and whether the medicine helped, then orders her to go to bed. This feels weird because it gives off the idea that the mother dictates what the girl is allowed to do 24/7. I don't have enough information to confirm or disprove this thought, but I might be able to say more about this after playing through the sequel. This was the first possible ending in the game. Let's look at the second one. The game will start the same, but we will now pick the negative options the text boxes gives us. The ending sequence confirms to me what we've already talked about earlier. The medicine is the name you put in at the start of the game, and is what causes the girl to have more rational thoughts that can either help her buy the milk or bully her. This gives her the clarity she needs to either help herself or be mean to herself. The mean thoughts are possibly things her mother has also said to her if she's also verbally abusive towards her daughter. If you play the game again and enter the same name, you'll get this sequence. That's the entire game for you. You can get it for about €1 on Steam. Now I'd like to wrap up this video by summarizing my thoughts on this girl. Let me try to create a timeline. The mother of our protagonist is physically abusive towards her daughter, possibly also towards the father. She could also be verbally abusive on top of this. This gets to a point where the father decides to commit suicide and jumps off the balcony or out of the window. This causes the girl to be so traumatized to the point where there's a large gap in her memory. She most likely has PTSD. When she starts remembering things again, she suffers from psychosis and possibly depression. She starts taking medicine at this point. Now, it's unclear whether the psychosis is caused by the traumatic events or maybe by antidepressant medication, but for the sake of clarity, I'll say she has psychosis as a result of the traumatic event and leave the depression out of the situation. She also shows obsessive-compulsive symptoms, which leads me to think she might also suffer from OCD. Her mother is still abusive towards her, since if she does not bring back the milk, she will be thrown out the window by her. However, this could also be a delusion. That's my take on the story of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk. Again, I am only a student and not yet qualified to officially diagnose someone, and this is purely done for entertainment purposes. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to support me, like, comment and subscribe for more content like this.